Michael Rockefeller was more than just an heir to one of the wealthiest families in America. He was a passionate explorer, an anthropologist, and a man driven by an insatiable curiosity about the world's most remote cultures. From his early years growing up in the shadow of his famous family to his groundbreaking work documenting the indigenous tribes of New Guinea, Michael's life was marked by a deep commitment to understanding the world around him. In this video, we'll explore his childhood, schooling, family, and early years that led him on an unforgettable journey, ultimately shaping the legacy he left behind. Michael Rockefeller was born on May 18, 1938, in New York City, to Nelson Rockefeller and his second wife, Mary Todd Hunter Clark. He came from one of the wealthiest and most influential families in the United States, the Rockefeller family. His father, Nelson, was a businessman, philanthropist, and later Vice President of the United States under President Gerald Ford. His mother, Mary, was a socialite and a member of a prominent family in her own right. Growing up in a privileged environment, Michael had access to some of the best educational resources available. His childhood was shaped by the presence of his famous family members, including his father's busy career and the family's immense wealth. He had 4 siblings, and while they lived in the family's New York City mansion, they also spent time in the family's large estates, such as the Rockefeller Ranch in Pecanico Hills, New York. For his early education, Michael attended the prestigious Buckley School in New York City, which catered to young boys from affluent families. Later, he went on to Phillips Exeter Academy in New Hampshire, one of the most elite private schools in the country. At Exeter, Michael was known for his athleticism, participating in sports like swimming, and his curious, adventurous nature. Despite his family's legacy, Michael's personality was noted for being independent and driven by personal passion rather than just a desire for wealth or fame. After completing his education at Exeter, he attended Harvard University, where he studied history and cultural anthropology. Harvard was a place where his interest in anthropology deepened, especially after spending time with peers and professors who shared his fascination with indigenous cultures. It was during his time at Harvard that he began to develop a particular interest in the Pacific Islands, which led to his later expeditions in New Guinea. Although Michael had access to a world of privilege, he was known for his desire to carve out his own path, away from the shadow of his family name. This drive to explore different cultures and document them led him to pursue his interest in anthropology seriously. His early life, marked by the opportunities provided by his wealthy family, also showcased his personal ambition and intellectual curiosity that would guide his future endeavors. After completing his education at Harvard, Michael Rockefeller's interests shifted toward anthropology, which ultimately led him to pursue a career that combined his passion for exploration with his academic background. In 1960, he began working with Dutch anthropologist René Wassing, whom he met during his studies, and they embarked on an expedition to New Guinea to study the cultures of the indigenous tribes there. Rockefeller was particularly fascinated by the Asmat people, known for their unique art, rituals, and their complex relationship with their environment. At the time, Michael was also involved with the Museum of Primitive Art in New York City, which had been established by his father, Nelson Rockefeller. His role there allowed him to immerse himself in the study of indigenous cultures, and he became particularly drawn to documenting the art and customs of the Pacific Islands. His travels to New Guinea were a way to combine his academic pursuits with his desire to directly engage with the cultures he admired. Throughout the early 1960s, Rockefeller spent considerable time in remote regions, establishing himself not just as a wealthy heir, but as an individual genuinely dedicated to anthropological study. His trips were not about luxury or sightseeing, but about immersion in the lives of indigenous communities. Michael often lived among these people, learning their languages, understanding their traditions, and documenting their art and customs, all of which he believed could shed light on the diversity of human experience. As his time in New Guinea progressed, his passion for these communities and their way of life grew, and he became increasingly committed to preserving and sharing their stories with the outside world. This period marked the peak of Michael's exploration and cultural studies, making him one of the more adventurous figures of the era, driven by a desire to contribute to the understanding of indigenous cultures. In the months leading up to Michael Rockefeller's disappearance, his work in New Guinea was intensifying. His fascination with the Asmat people had become a central focus of his studies. He had spent several months living in the region, immersing himself in their culture and working to document their customs, art, and rituals. By this point, Rockefeller had already developed a strong rapport with the local tribes, gaining their trust and admiration for his dedication. His latest expedition, planned with Rene Wassing, was to take them even deeper into the Asmat territory. The goal was to make contact with remote communities that had limited interaction with outsiders, and Rockefeller was eager to learn more about their way of life. He was prepared for the challenges of the trip, carrying with him supplies and a deep respect for the people he was about to encounter. However, as he ventured farther into the region, the conditions grew more perilous. The rivers of the area were unpredictable, and the dense jungle terrain made travel difficult. Despite these challenges, Rockefeller's enthusiasm remained unwavering. His determination to document the Asmat's way of life and deepen his understanding of their culture drove him forward. This period was characterized by a sense of urgency and adventure, as he worked to complete his research before the approaching monsoon season would make the region even more difficult to navigate. During this time, Rockefeller's deep immersion in the indigenous cultures was also intertwined with his relationship with his family. His father, Nelson Rockefeller, had continued to support his anthropological pursuits, even though his son's independent nature meant that he often operated outside the confines of the family's influence. Despite the risks, Michael remained resolute in his mission, believing that the knowledge he would gain from the Asmat people would be invaluable to the wider world. On the day Michael Rockefeller disappeared, he and Rene Wassing had been traveling by boat along the coast of New Guinea, aiming to reach a remote area inhabited by the Asmat people. Their boat, a small wooden craft, was caught in a sudden and powerful storm. Despite their efforts to navigate through the rough waters, the boat capsized. Wassing was able to swim to safety, but Michael was last seen struggling to reach shore. As Wassing made his way to land and later found help, he was unable to find Michael, who had been separated from him during the chaos of the storm. This marked the last known moment of Michael Rockefeller's life in the region, as he was never seen again after that day. Following Michael Rockefeller's disappearance, the aftermath unfolded in a series of steps, with efforts to locate him intensifying as the days and weeks passed. Initial search efforts. After Rene Wassing was rescued, a search operation was launched by the Dutch authorities and local officials. The area was vast, with dense jungles and unpredictable river systems, making the search difficult. The local Asmat people were also involved in the search, though their responses varied, with some indicating that they had not seen Michael after the boat capsized. Despite extensive efforts, no trace of Rockefeller was found during the immediate search. Family response: Michael's family, particularly his father, Nelson Rockefeller, were devastated by the news. His disappearance shocked the Rockefeller family, as they had been aware of Michael's passion for exploration but had never anticipated such a tragic turn. Nelson, while dealing with the pressures of his public career as Vice President of the United States, supported the search efforts, but the family faced the painful uncertainty of not knowing what had happened to Michael. Government involvement: the U.S. government, under the direction of the State Department, also became involved in the search for Michael, as he was an American citizen. The Dutch government, who controlled New Guinea at the time, conducted their own search with limited results. Despite both American and Dutch involvement, no conclusive evidence emerged that could explain Michael's fate. Speculation and theories: as weeks turned into months, various theories began to circulate about Michael's fate. The most widely discussed theory was that he had been killed by the Asmat people, either as part of a ritualistic act or due to a cultural misunderstanding. Some suggested that Michael had been captured and murdered as part of a revenge attack, while others posited that he might have drowned in the rough waters or succumbed to the elements in the jungle. Over time, the idea of him being killed by the Asmat became the most widely accepted explanation, though there was no definitive proof. Family's response over time: as time passed, the Rockefeller family remained in a state of grief and uncertainty. Michael's mother, Mary Rockefeller, expressed her sorrow publicly, but the family was also careful about not giving up hope entirely. The Rockefellers maintained a level of dignity and privacy, with Nelson particularly focused on his political career at the time. However, the emotional toll on the family was significant, and the loss of Michael cast a long shadow over the Rockefellers. Public and media attention: Michael's disappearance attracted significant media attention, especially due to his family's high profile. The press speculated on every possible aspect of the case, including his motivations for being in New Guinea, his interactions with the indigenous people, and the search efforts. Books, documentaries, and articles continued to explore his life, and his mysterious disappearance became a topic of intrigue for decades to come. Later developments: despite the official search being called off after a few months, rumors continued to circulate about Michael's fate. Some suggested that he might have been living among the Asmat people, while others believed he had perished in the harsh conditions. No concrete evidence ever surfaced to confirm any of these theories, and the mystery remained unsolved. Over the years, new expeditions were mounted by independent researchers and journalists, but these too yielded little information. Cultural impact: the mystery of Michael Rockefeller's disappearance became a defining story of the era, particularly given his status as a member of one of the wealthiest and most famous families in the U.S. It also highlighted the intersection between Western exploration and indigenous cultures. Michael's life and disappearance were examined in documentaries, books, and articles, and his story continued to be a point of fascination for people interested in the boundaries between the known and unknown, civilization and the wild. Despite the passage of time, Michael Rockefeller's fate remains one of the most enduring unsolved mysteries of the 20th century, and his disappearance continues to spark curiosity about the risks of exploration and the complexity of human encounters in remote parts of the world. As we reflect on the life of Michael Rockefeller, we are reminded of the spirit of adventure and curiosity that drove him to explore the world's most remote corners. His passion for understanding different cultures, especially the Asmat people of New Guinea, left a lasting legacy in the field of anthropology. Though his disappearance remains a mystery, his dedication to the study of indigenous cultures continues to inspire. Michael's story is a poignant reminder of the